This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Mulleary and this is X Job Download. And today I'm going to interview Dean Morgan. Now, Dean is a former member of the 1st Battalion of the Welsh Guards and has now moved into private industry. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thank you so much for taking part in this today. And I know it's a new chapter of your life today, but we'll get onto that later on. But before we start, where did it all begin for Dean, and what was the inspiration for you to join one of the finest fighting forces in the British Army?
Brilliant. That's a great introduction to my former regiment, Paul. Really appreciate that. So I grew up in Swansea, down in South Wales. Sort of never really had any sort of inkling to join the army in my sort of early years. Like every kid, I wanted to become a professional footballer. As I sort of getting older, you do things that lads do, get into a little bit of trouble. It wasn't serious, just the normal stuff, 14, 15-year-old lads get up to, and there's very little to do. And I walked past the Army Careers Office one day when I was about 14, probably, or 15, and I looked through the window and there was a video on, one of the old sort of Frank ones that the Army used to push out. But this one focused in on the Welsh Guards. And it had sort of video footage of sort of patrolling the jungles in Belize and, at the time out in Northern Ireland and operations. And then it suddenly flicked to watch this immaculate display of foot drill and arms drill in the red tunic and the bearskin. And at that moment, I was really hooked, to be honest. And I went in, got a load of information. I was still too young at that age to join, but I went in, got a lot of information, spoke to the recruiting sergeant at the time who was in there, a Welsh Guardsman. And he really sort of mentored me and provided that inspiration as a young lad from the age of like 14 when I first stuck my head in there, all the way through to joining when I was 16 years old in 1995.
Fantastic. And I have had the pleasure, the honour of going to the birthday parade and watching the troops parade there, and it is just awe-inspiring. Honestly, it puts a chill down my spine now, and to know people that were in there, as I was lucky to, it's just absolutely fantastic. But what was your first introduction to going into the training side of it, and where did you go to?
Yeah, so on the 8th of October 1995, a skinny little 16-year-old in a Burton suit with ill-fitting trousers and ill-fitting shoes, with white socks for the suit, turned up at the gates in Pirbright in Surrey. So the Guards depot had closed for about a year, maybe 2 years before I got the training. So I didn't get to experience the Guards depot as it was then. So it was called ATR Pirbright at this time, Army Training Regiment Pirbright, and I was there for 10 weeks. And, the first couple of days I was like, oh my Lord, what have I joined? I mean, the shock of capture was just absolutely unreal. These big, huge sort of guardsmen, lance sergeants as they were, really sort of, to me, they were Rambo, and I was absolutely petrified of them. And for that first few weeks there, I was in absolute survival mode. I didn't know whether I was coming or going, being told how long you've got to eat your food, running back down a dare walk, which is a famous walkway in Pirbright from the Guards depot days. There's sort of like a pie and chips in your pocket, trying to eat it while getting changed for the next lesson. So it was a really, really big shock of capture. And I really struggled to adapt to the military way of life at that age. And I really did wonder whether I'd made the right choice at all,
So how old are you at this point?
16. So I literally finished my last exam in June. I joined the army then in the October.
Wow, 16 years old. So does that count as regular service or boy service at that point?
No, and at the time I didn't have a clue. They were saying, "Oh, your colour service won't start till you're 18." And I just nodded my head. I didn't really have a clue what they were talking about. But so 2 years there I did, which didn't count for anything, to be honest. But looking back, and I sort of, as I reflect at the end of my sort of 28, 29-year career now, I think that was a really, really good move for me at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is life-changing, and it moulds people into the persons that they are today. Because the other option, those skirmishes with the authorities at the age 15, they increase. And I'm sure there'll be people in Swansea that are sitting on the same bar stools that they were sitting on 30 years ago, telling the same stories and the same jokes to the poor bar person who's behind the ramp serving them. and they haven't done half the things that you guys have gone on to do. At what point, though, do you go to regiment and you get, your scarlets and your bearskin? At what age are you then?
So I was still 16, and I think at that point there'd been a little mess up with the paperwork, because I can remember getting the battalion after finishing at Catterick, being fitted out, and we had what was called the Major General's inspection, which is like the sort of the big inspection of the year, where the Major General, who is in charge of all the sort of household division troops, he will come and inspect every single person in the battalion.
Wow.
in their tunic. And, back in those days, in 1996 it was, by the time I got there, it was the whole battalion was on the square, from the Prince of Wales's company all the way through to support company and headquarter company. The whole regiment was on the square. And I mean, and I was lucky enough, I was in number 2 company. So as he went along and did the Prince of Wales's company first, who is the first company, the leading company, they would be dismissed and could go off the square. But if you're in poor old support company, you're still stood there 3 hours later waiting to get inspected. And that was the first big thing. But I can remember him coming across to me, looking at me and said, "Gosh, you're young. How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 16, sir." And he went, "How old?" And I said, 16. And he went, "I think we better keep that one quiet." And he walked off and moved along. And of course, the regimental sergeant major at the time, John Harford, I still see now, actually lives. We see bump into each other on parkrun nearly every Sunday.
Brilliant.
He sort of pulled me at the end and said, "You're a young lad. Please don't be afraid to reach out if you need help," so on and so forth. So even at that early stage, when I first joined the battalion, I had the sort of the proudness of putting on that sort of scarlet tunic and the bearskin, but I also started to feel like a really valued member of the team, even at that age. And don't get me wrong, Paul, the army was a different time then. It wasn't probably as welcoming as it should be to sort of new people joining the battalion and the regiment. But at that point there, when you have the senior soldier, telling you not to worry about things, and if you need help, just ask your platoon sergeant and the platoon staff, that was really a sort of comforting moment,
But it was character building. But I also know that at that time there were issues taking place in the training camps. I think Pirbright was one that actually came under a lot of spotlight. Where suicides had taken place, etc., etc. And so there were a number of issues. But it is character building, and we nowhere near the way that you guys were. But we had a similar issue when I joined the police. And you were run around from breakfast to tea, and for the first so many weeks you weren't allowed in the bar, or you had to be in your pit by 9:30, 9:45, all those things. But a structured life, when you go into the services or into the police, actually puts you in good stead for the futures.
It's right, Paul. That's it. And I think the importance of building that routine as well. The importance of getting to bed timely. The importance of getting up, and made famous by Admiral McRaven, that speech about making your bed. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but there's no truer word said there. And I go absolutely ballistic in my house. My kids don't get up, and the first thing they do is make their bed. My wife says I'm regimented, institutionalized, but the importance of having some sort of structured routine, I think, is great for yourself physically, but also mentally as well. I think that really does start to sort of mold the foundations, if you like, of being able to structure your life and being able to organize your life as well. So I think at that real early stage, that really did work with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, dare I say it, that's the first piece of structure that some young soldiers have in their lives.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Because it is an escape area for some people. Their options are, I'm not saying go off to jail, but go down that route of criminality and bad behaviour, antisocial behaviour, and then all of a sudden you get this structure where all that energy can be channeled into the right direction. I think it's brilliant, and I do feel for these young soldiers that leave after 3 years, because I don't think they've achieved their full potential and actually given themselves that chance. You cannot know whether you enjoy it in such a short space of time. But, we see people signing off early all the time, don't we?
Yeah, that's it.
Where did you go to once you've finished your boy service, your 2 year service? I mean, did you stay with the same company?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, but unfortunately, again, because I was under the age of 18, I missed out on deploying to the first sort of Northern Ireland tour that I possibly could have gone on, down to South Armagh.
Right.
I mean, this was a big sort of tour that the battalion were really, really gearing up for. And and for me as a 17-year-old as I was then, to do the training and then watch my mates disappear out the door on operations was absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I was placed on the rear operations group for 6 months because I wasn't 18 till the battalion came back. So I couldn't even get out there for 28 days to go and experience operations. So I was on the ROG for sort of six months, which wasn't great. And at that stage, I started having negative thoughts on leaving the army. To be perfectly honest, I was really, really gutted that I wouldn't go. But when they came back, there was an opportunity to go with the Scots Guards out to Northern Ireland to form a composite company with the Coldstream Guards and Scots Guards. And Nick Mott, I'm not sure if you come across Bill's brother.
Yeah. He's at Chelsea Hospital now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Nick was the company major at the time. And I was sort of badgering him every single day because I'd heard on the grapevine that they were looking for volunteers for this Northern Ireland tour. I eventually sort of... I think Nick got pissed off with me turning up there every sort of 5 to 10 minutes, and he put my name forward, and I deployed up to Northern Ireland at the age of sort of 18, 19, like many youngsters did at that time. But that was the sort of end of being a sort of boy soldier, if you like, although you did everything else bar on operations.
Yeah. And
that was the very start in Northern Ireland there with the Scots Guards.
And what barracks were you at that time?
So we were still in Wellington Barracks.
Right, okay, in central London.
In central London, living the high life in SW1 as a sort of 16, 17, 18-year-old, great times.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, a lot did, Paul, but not for your viewers.
No,
or listeners to you.
I stayed there. I stayed there in 2011, and it was interesting times. But waking up to the Scots Guards playing their pipes out on the landings, mate, was absolutely phenomenal. It puts the chills through you just listening to those bagpipes go. But we digress. What was it like though? You've done your training and you are deployed to Northern Ireland. What was that like at those times? Because we're now getting ready to go through the peace accord, the Good Friday Agreement, and there are a lot of issues that are being identified and being ignored because they want to push this accord through. What was that like for you?
I mean, to be honest, Paul, I didn't really know too much about the political and sort of geopolitical situation of the province when I was a young lad. But lucky enough or unlucky enough, so it depends which side the fence you really sit on. Is the ceasefire was on when I was over there, so the helmets had been taken off. It was patrolling in berets. Really trying to sort of interact with the two sides of the community a lot more. But what there was quite a lot of was sort of civil unrest. So, the sort of riots that they used to have just outside London, Derry or Derry, a couple of other places. That was the majority of what we were involved in as B Company there.
Right. For me, going to Northern Ireland, I found it really surprising how small it is. You'll go to Belfast and it's a small town. It's a city, but it's quite small.
Yeah.
What was the interaction like off duty? Were you able to go out into the towns? You go out and have a few beers, but I suppose you had to watch where you went.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we were lucky enough. We joined a Roulemont battalion. So the Scots Guards were there for 2 years. And because it was a residential tour, they were allowed to book out. Now, we were only there for like 7 or 8 months, but we also fell under the same rules. So we were allowed to sort of book out. I mean, because we were only there for sort of 8 months, we were really busy and we operated sort of province-wide from all across the sort of different counties. And it's funny enough, I still remember the mnemonic FATLAD of all the different sort of counties within Northern Ireland. So Fermanagh, Antrim, Tyrone, Londonderry, Armagh, Down, and that's like another thing which is just imprinted in my brain. But because we were sort of operating province-wide wherever they needed troops, we didn't get much time off. But what time off we did have, We were able to go and sample the sort of delights of the nightlife in Belfast, a little sort of village stroke town called Ballynahinch, and really get out into the sort of community of Northern Ireland. But you know, you have to have your wits about you. You have to be careful. You have to follow all the sort of strict procedures. You had to constantly update yourself of where the out of bounds routes were, the out of bounds pubs, what was going on sort of politically, just so you could keep yourself and your muckers safe. And you know, you operated that sort of shark watch where one of you would always sort of stay sober and keep a lookout for things that were going on or stuff happening around you that your guys who have your mates who had a few beers might not normally see. But yeah, you did have to keep your wits about you, and you did have to sort of keep yourself informed.
Yeah, I can imagine. I had the pleasure of playing hockey out there, and the special branch guy that was with us ended up drinking as much as we did, and it went horribly wrong at one point. But anyway, when you come back, at what point do you start going down the promotion route? Because you ended up with a commission, but how did that all fall for you?
Yeah, so, and again, I sort of the first part of my career, I'd probably say that I wasn't the very best soldier whatsoever. You know, I lived loving in SW1 in London. I loved that life, going sort of, you know, and what I found amazing in London, so I digress in it, you could go somewhere in London any night of the week, and it's like a Saturday night somewhere, you know, through Monday through the thing. And, you know, I wasn't the world's greatest soldier. I wasn't that fit, but it was at the point, probably around sort of 5 years in, where the company Sir Major at the time suggested I move out of number 2 company and go and try one of the support platoons. And at that time, the reconnaissance platoon was looking for members. So I went across, spoke to the reconnaissance platoon sergeant. I went across and joined the reconnaissance platoon. And in that environment, it's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more grown up. And I really sort of felt at home there, because the sort of more senior members of the platoon, the commanders, the lance sergeants, the platoon sergeants, were relaxed, sort of had a really relaxed manner, but they knew their stuff. They were very, very knowledgeable and incredible soldiers. And without them knowing it, they, you know, the likes of Gary Jones 40, the Hughes twins, David Meredith, Geraint Roberts, all those guys really were the sort of foundations of me becoming a good soldier, you know.
That's fantastic, isn't it? Because we've all got sort of working heroes, haven't we? People that we look upon as being inspirational, and that's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is.
Had you been overseas in that time? So between the changing companies, had you been on any other deployments?
No, I think there was a couple of overseas exercises to Canada and a couple of other places in Europe. But when I joined the reconnaissance platoon, we were gearing up for another operation in Bosnia,
right?
Operation Palatine. And the reconnaissance platoon were going to form what was called the Enhanced Divisional Reconnaissance Capability, EDRC, which was doing some real sort of good work out in the Balkans, looking sort of and observing persons of interest. And that was an absolutely phenomenal job to be doing at the age of sort of 20, 21.
Cool, yeah. Did you get given all the kit? I mean, to do reconnaissance, surveillance, whatever, did you get provided with the appropriate, I mean, you probably had all the bells and whistles, everything that you needed in order to carry out your role. Did you get, I don't know how to phrase it, were you put into the situation, or did you literally do it from afar?
Did it from afar. I mean, that close-up stuff is probably down to sort of tier 1, tier 2 SF sort of capabilities. But we were from afar. But you know, we could do it from various platforms. We could do it with various bits of kit and equipment. And yeah, we did. We had all the bells and whistles from the communications kit. We had really sort of good stuff through to the camera kit, which is really good stuff as well.
Yeah, if the public knew what was available, they would make their hair curl.
I mean, even in 2002, when it was some pretty Gucci stuff.
And that's what that's what I'm saying. Even then, technology was still on the side of the good guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Now the
That's a
baddies
good, yeah,
baddies have access to it too. But
yeah.
yeah, using microwave cameras. I mean, that was just bizarre. We don't need to use microwave cameras anymore. But I worked on operations where we would use microwave cameras on the top of buildings.
Mm.
Absolutely bizarre. But what was that like going to the Balkans though? Because there'd obviously been this massive. It was like Northern Ireland, but on steroids, wasn't it? I mean, you had the two different factions were literally just killing each other. There was genocide all over the place. What was that like for you as a young soldier?
I mean, at this stage, I think you start paying a little bit more attention to the place you go into. And I remember, again, being in the platoon that was in, the platoon commander put on sort of history lessons so we could understand the strategic context of the country that we're going into. And I think I was acutely aware of the devastation, the death and just the heartache that was involved in that country. And you used to pass sort of memorials to sort of mass graves, and you could see 200 300 people killed in one place in a mass grave, unbelievable sort of stuff. And all that had sort of long finished when we'd got there, but you could feel it, you could sense it. That country had been through so much heartache. It sort of poured out of the people that were there. And used to do a few operations where we go sort of collecting sort of weapons and stuff, and a lot of these people had sort of nothing. They'd live up in the hills, and but the first thing they would do was bring out the slivo, which is the sort of Bosnian sort of brandy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you'd have a designated drink. I don't think that you wouldn't do that now, but you had the designated drinker who could sort of sit there and have a glass of brandy with everybody. But that went wrong on a couple of occasions where that stuff is so strong. We literally had to carry the designated drinker to the back of the wagon, put him in the back, and leave it slip off. But once they'd sort of had a few glasses of slivo, they'd open up about things that happened to them, things that happened to their families. And I won't repeat some of it, but absolutely heartbreaking stuff that those people went through.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're still living with it today. And I've never been, but I understand it's a beautiful country.
Oh, beautiful, Paul. Absolutely beautiful country.
But isn't that always the way? You've got these Northern Ireland's a beautiful country.
Yeah,
there's some great scenery there. But when you come back to the UK, what was your next role? Did you stay within reconnaissance?
Yeah, so I stayed within the reconnaissance platoon, and when I was out there, I flew back and did my promotion course.
Right.
Down in HDPRCC. So, I'd been in the army 6 or 7 years by that stage. Quite a late starter when it comes to promotion in terms of sort of averages. But I went away and did my promotion course down in HDPRCC. Then came back from there, and in 2003, I had a crack at selection. So. Right. Give that a crack. Didn't go as I wanted it to. And I'm not going to sit here and say, it was because of this, because of that. It's because I think at that time I just met my wife, and I think with that, and again, other people know a lot more about me about that. But if you are not 100% committed, and you have 1.001% of doubt in your mind, then you ain't going to get through it. I had an injury. There was a couple of other things as well. And, I didn't make the grade and I didn't get through. But, that happened in 2003. And from there, then I went back to number 2 company as a Lance Sergeant, because I promoted quite quickly after Lance Corporal, because I did okay on the promotion course. And then we were gearing up, ready to go to Iraq.
Wow. And what was the specialism for 2 company?
We were just a rifle company. No,
right.
we were just a rifle company.
Yeah, because I know that each one, you'll have somebody that will do mortars and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's in the support companies. You have the mortars, anti-tanks, assault pioneers, reconnaissance platoon.
Right. So you're gearing up for Iraq. And it was busy out there at that time, wasn't it? I mean, it was full on, very kinetic. It was just everything was happening.
Yeah.
What year did you get deployed there?
So we went out on Opteric 5, so that was 2004 stroke 2005. So all through the build-up training, the Cheshires and the PWRR, they were out there on the Telic before us. And, you know, we were getting all the reports coming back, all the lessons learned. And those boys and men and women, they were scrapping every single day on the streets of Basra and Alamara, respectively. You know, they were fighting and fighting well and fighting hard as well. And I think as we were going through the training and we were seeing all this stuff coming back, it was the realization to me that, okay, this is not Northern Ireland, this is Bosnia. It's a different enemy, it's a different ideology. You're going to be fighting, so you need to start preparing yourself and your people for that.
Yeah.
And you know, we went through a really good training package, and at the time, the commanding officer was General Bathurst, as he is now, but he was the lieutenant colonel then. He put a real focus on understanding Iraqi culture, getting culture lessons, getting language lessons, so we could really understand and communicate and get on with the population. And it wasn't until I got there that I realised why he did that. So we got there, and we thought we'd be straight into sort of fighting, as the Cheshires and the PWRR were, and the other sort of regiments that were on Opteric 4. But we got there, and they'd managed to sort of calm the situation down. A lot of good work by those sort of two regiments before we got there. They managed to calm that situation down. And we really focused on engaging with the local population, engaging with the Iraqi police, engaging with the Iraqi army, and in some cases, I bet at a higher level, you know, engaging with Muqtada al-Sadr and his sort of captains within the Mahdi army, and they really managed to sort of calm that situation down. But during sort of that time in Iraq was where I first experienced enemy action.
Right.
And we were out on a patrol at night, doing check for motor base place to make sure that no mortar teams were gonna mortar the base. And the front vehicle, I was in the second vehicle behind, hit a command wire IED. So that IED went off, and we were in the famous snatch vehicles at the time.
Yeah.
And it blew a hole straight in the back. Now, at the time, our sort of immediate action drill was to get out of the killing area. And the second vehicle, which I was in, floored it, got out of the killing area, and just observed and waited for a follow-up, because, you know, the MO of the sort of insurgents at that stage, that they hit you with an IED, and then they'd hit you from multiple firing points with sort of small arms, direct weapons. That didn't come. So we pulled back into the killing area, my vehicle, and, you know, opened the back doors to a little bit of scene of chaos. 3 guys in the back were fine. The fourth guy had took the sort of the impact of the blast into his posterior. So he'd like blown his bum sort of smithereens. And, you know, all the sort of lads that were with us that night performed absolutely outstandingly. You know, I couldn't have asked for more of any of them. They were absolutely incredible. And, you know, the young soldier that sort of got really badly sort of wounded there, we managed to extract him back. And it was at that point where I realised this is the real deal. This is actually the real deal. This is what you've probably been training for now for the past umpteen years of your career.
Yeah, this is the pinnacle point, isn't it? Because, as you say, this isn't a police in action. You're not there to make sure that you're there to do the job against the insurgents, which is hard. Where did you fly into when you arrived there?
Oh, we flew into Basra Airport, and yeah, I laughed there because I was talking about this with my son the other day. He's just joined the Air Force, and I can remember flying into Basra. I mean, I think we flew into Al Udeid first on a nice sort of a TriStar, comfortable sort of civilianized RAF plane, and then we were transferred into a C-130. And I can remember sitting there, just sort of, you get the call off the Lord Master to put your helmet and your body armor on. So you put that on, and all of a sudden, this aircraft just absolutely dipped its nose, And I was like, oh, and I'm not the world's best flyer anyway, Paul. And I looked around and I could see all these sort of Welsh Guardsmen's faces looking at each other. And then you looked across to the Lordmaster and he was having a chuckle, but they're going to do a tactical land into sort of Baso Airport. But yeah, would be nice to know that before they drop the nose of the aircraft and, you know, nearly filled the back of the C-130 with some smelly stuff from the Guardsmen.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and that was a tough job going in there and all the other places. They do such a remarkable role by getting people in safely. I don't know how.
Incredible.
You know, yeah, absolutely. So it must put your faith in there, because you think how many hundreds of landings they've carried out, and there've been no significant issues. Although they did come under fire, didn't they? The aircraft did come under fire, because it's even worse now with the technology and the radar, the ability for people to watch it on their phones. But yeah, it's an interesting one. When you get there and you've got a casualty, your thoughts are twofold, aren't they? Because you're looking after yourself, because you know, preservation of life, and it's your life first, because if your life's not saved, then you can't save somebody else's life. What goes through your mind when that explosion takes place?
So, and again, this sounds really corny and cheesy, Paul, but because we had trained that hard, we all knew what the immediate action was. We all knew how we were going to react. And, you know, the training really does kick in. But the first thing you need to do, mate, as you said, is just ensure that you've got that safe space to operate and work. So you do your sort of 5 and 20 meter checks straight away to make sure there's no secondary device. You make sure you've got a safe area to put the casualty in, so the guys can get to work on them. At the same time, then the commander's calling in the casualty report and requesting a casualty evacuation to get the casualty off. And because we'd done that so many different times in training and the different scenarios, we were all really comfortable with the process and with the drill. You know, and one of my old bosses before I left, who always had the phrase of planning is everything, the plan is nothing. And I think that really, really rings true, that, you know, you have done all the planning. You understand how long it takes you to set up stretcher. You understand how long it's going to take you to put a first field dressing on. All the science, the planning is done. But the plan is not really anything, because no plan survives initial contact with the enemy.
Indeed.
But because you've done all the science, you've done the sort of your drills, the planning is absolutely everything.
Everything. Yeah, you can only guide it to a certain point. And if the enemy never responds in the way that you'll expect them to, irrespective of, you know, same with the police service, we could plan and plan and plan. And the minute you go on somewhere, the plan changes because X happens. You'll get resistance. You'll have somebody who'll have a pit bull waiting for you to go through the front door, or whatever it may be. Were you on the tour when the colonel was killed?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so that was Afghanistan, Helmand Province, summer of 2009. Yeah, I was on that tour. What had I done? I just finished senior Brecon. So that's your sergeant's course you do up in the Brecon Beacons. You go up there and get. Sorry?
Did you go to Crickhowl?
No, you work out of Daring Lines, which is like in the centre of Brecon, near enough. Right. But you're never there. You're always out on the training area in Senny Bridge.
Right.
So you do that course to get your platoon sergeant, and it's for me that's like a big puffer in the sergeant's mess that you've done senior Brecon. You know, it's really proud of passing that course at that stage of my career. It's very difficult. It's long. It's arduous, but it's such a phenomenal course because you just learn so much about command, about control, about leadership. It's it's an incredible course. But anyway, so I finished that, and then again was honoured to take over a platoon sergeant position in my old company, number 2 company. So I took number 6 platoon across to Afghanistan in the summer of 2009. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was a tough gig, that one, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And I mean, you know, we could talk about what happened in Iraq, but this was just on a complete different scale. I mean, this was fighting every single day. And, you know, I'm not alone in that. Everybody of my generation, every deployed on Operation Herrick would have been exactly the same. So it's not just me trying to sort of make out I'm some sort of Rambo. This was everybody. But it's every single day was the threat of IED. Every day you'd be involved in some skirmish with the enemy, whether that been an IED or whether that been an attack with small arms weapons.
It is horrifying, mate. I've got to be honest with you. And I'm very proud of the army. I'm a pad brat. My dad was in the army, military policeman, but we won't mention that. But I'm very proud of the army, and I get quite engaged with what you guys talk about. And I interviewed a chap called Simon Maloney who won the CGC, and he was in the cavalry, and he was a sniper, and he's on the roof of a house shack in Afghanistan, and he got shot between the Adam's apple and his throat.
Oh.
And and then he fell off the roof. I mean, this is bizarre. He fell off of the roof onto a goat because he's got his armor plate, he's got everything on, Yeah. And I've seen the video of the medic running across this open land whilst the Afghanis are taking shots at him, and all he keeps saying is, every day's a leg day, every day's a leg day. He was knackered, but he got there and he said, Si said, take your hands away from your throat. You'll get an infection, you'll die. He said, mate, if I don't get on that roof, we're all going to die anyway. And he got back on the roof and he shot the Afghani that had shot him. And my heart, listening to you, my heart is pumping in my chest, because I'm just so proud of what you guys did, because I don't think there'll be another generation that will do that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Paul. When I look back, and I was approaching sort of 30 years old. I think, in fact, I had my 29th birthday on the Chaminade Canal, and I look back, and some of these men and women were 18, 19 years old, and looking at some of the stuff that they were doing was absolutely phenomenal, incredible. And, in my opinion, a lot of our people, Welsh Guardsmen, should have had some honours and awards. I'm not really sure what went on there. It's a little bit controversial, but for me, there's, at least 3 that should be walking around with at least a CGC on their chest. And that didn't happen. And that really did upset me when we came back, because you see all the other regiments who sort of, rightly so, getting their people high honours and awards, and we didn't get anything higher than a mention in dispatches for other ranks, and that really upset me at the time, and I'm not saying it for myself, but at least 3 of my soldiers, I witnessed things that would have warranted at least CGC military cost sort of level.
That's terrible, isn't it? Because that reward and recognition, and the pride that goes with it. And it's inspirational, because what it actually means is that the younger soldiers think, do you know what? If I do the right job, I'll get the recognition, and it gives them something to. That's terrible.
Yeah, yeah, it did, and that really upset me when I came back. But we lost a lot of really, really, really good people. Col Thorneloe, Mark Everson, Toby Fastfoos, Dane Elson, Sean Birchall, Mark. Lost really, really good people over there, and difficult time. But people ask me about what was it like, and it's the best and worst time of your life, because you really do see how far a motivated soldier can push themselves, how far they can inflict ruthless violence on the enemy, controlled as a 18, 19-year-old, And the worst times are, losing people and, seeing some pretty nasty stuff through sort of blast injuries and other such things. But, definitely sort of the best and worst time of your life.
Yeah, I can imagine, mate. I can only imagine. When you've finished your tour, what was that like? You're leaving. You've done your last overseas tour, which was Afghanistan, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like as you're flying off into the sunset? Because you didn't know you weren't going back, did you? Because it could have continued.
Yeah, it could have. So I actually did go back one more time, but it wasn't Helmand. as I was, and this is quite a funny story actually, coincidental, as the Coldstream Guards were getting off the C-130, I met a really good friend of mine who I did senior Brecon with, a guy called John Amer, Coldstream Guards. Now John was like the life and soul of the party. I don't think I've met a funnier man, you know, even when the chips were down on senior Brecon, everybody was a little bit, oh God, John would always find something funny somewhere. And I had a good chat with John on the back of the C-130 on the ramp, gave each other a hug, told him to stay safe. And that was the last I saw of him, you know, and unfortunately, John lost his life on that Herrick tour. You know, absolutely phenomenal sort of guy when it comes to fitness, and when it comes to sort of like lifting the mood and keeping the morale going. And that was the last time I sort of saw him, you know, just said stay safe on the back of the C-130 as we crossed over.
And that's heartbreaking, mate. That is heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's awful. Absolutely awful, mate. Absolutely awful.
I've got some friends who are at the Tower of London, Paul Cunliffe being one of them. I don't know if you know Paul.
I know Paul, yeah, I know Paul.
One of life's characters, Falklands veteran. He will tell some terrible tales. I mean, he witnessed some terrible things like yourself. But you know, really, really interesting, nice, funny guy. But it's the baggage after these events, isn't it? After the Falklands, the people that, because we didn't deal with PTSD. If you go back to, I mean, the Welsh Guards were formed, 1915, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So they're formed in 1915. With 1 year into the First World War, there would be people that were fighting out in the trenches that came back. There was no discussion around PTSD or anything like that. It was shell shock. That's what they would do. And that's moved forward. Fortunately now, we do recognise mental health and PTSD in a far better way. How did that evolve for you in your time within the military?
So I can't really comment personally, Paul, to be honest, because I you know, up until this point, and I say that sort of with sort of trepidation, up until this point, I've not really suffered personally with any sort of mental health issues, and I count myself lucky for that. And I can't really put my finger on why, but I think in terms of how the army and defence are dealing with it now, I think we're getting better. I think we still got a long, long way to go. But I think where I've seen people really suffer with sort of PTSD and mental health complications after sort of the likes of Afghanistan and Iraq is there's something else as well which has gone on in their earlier, younger life. You know, something else which has happened to them, which is heartbreaking and horrible. Then they go through that other piece of trauma, whether that be in Iraq or Afghanistan, and then that triggers something bigger. Point. But that's not always the case. But a lot of the things that I saw as a senior soldier, it definitely was.
I mean, putting a police comparator in there, I don't. And I spent in my later years, you know, being on a murder squad. You couldn't go on a murder squad without seeing dead bodies, you know. And when I got promoted, I was in mortuaries continually. Do I still? I remember every post-mortem, but do I go to bed and lay at night thinking, oh, you know, I've seen this and seen that, and I've experienced that? No, I don't. And I think you're right. I think there are other complications, and I'm not saying, you know, that it's everyone.
Yeah.
But there are probably other complications in people's lives that give it that trigger point and bring everything about. It's like lighting the match, basically. That's what it does. But you come back to the UK. What happens next?
So I started getting myself ready to go and do the Sandhurst Cadre to become an instructor in the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. So Sandhurst is like a unique world-class training establishment in the fact that, you know, they have colour sergeant instructors with the officer cadets from day one. You know, and other academies around the world don't do that. And I started getting myself ready. Me and a good friend of mine, Andrew Griffiths, who we've sort of followed each other through our Welsh Guards careers. We started, you know, getting fitter, ensuring that we could get the teaching practices right. Our instructional capability was as high as it could be. and really preparing our kit and equipment ready to go and do this sort of 6-week course where you're looked at in great detail from the minute you turn up there.
Yeah, it is a fantastic place, isn't it? How many people would you deal with, from the classroom's perspective, and what was your specialism at Sandhurst?
Yeah, so after doing the Sandhurst Carter, where you're sort of looked at for 6 weeks and your fitness is tested, but what you do is you do every single hard physical training event that the cadets do, and one of them is called Exercise Long Reach, which turns out to be like an 85-kilometer sort of tab across the Black Mountains, and rightly so as well. You need to be able to show face in front of the officer cadets, so you're able to do that as well. Once you get the word that you're in, it's quite a big achievement. You either go straight to the Skillet Arms Wing, where you will teach the officer cadets sort of rifle lessons and other various pyrotechnics that we use, or you will go to one of the colleges. So Sandhurst is broken down into two colleges. It might have changed now because I know they're under some big transformation program. But then you'd add Old College and New College. So Old College was where the cadets would go to do effectively their basic training.
Right.
They'd go there for the first term. I can't remember how long the terms. I think it's 12 weeks the terms are. So they do 12 weeks in Old College, then go to New College where they do intermediate term and then senior term. But I was lucky. I did 1 term in the Skillet Arms Wing, and then I sort of took my platoon from junior term all the way through their training through to commissioning. So I took them in Old College as sort of complete military virgins, a lot of them, through to commissioning and marching up the steps at the end for a full year.
And these aren't only British soldiers, are they? These are from all over the world. The great and the good come to Sandhurst to hone their military skills.
They absolutely do. I mean, you've got cadets that turn up from the Oman, United Arab Emirates, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, even the USA. West Point send their sort of brightest and best to Sandhurst, and I had an American cadet in my platoon who was really good, and it's really interesting as well because a lot of these officer cadets, when they become officers, they'll have sort of long careers. They will still be in touch with those sort of cadets that they met in Sandhurst from across the world, and that's how these strategic relationships also develop in the sidelines. So it's really I think it's a really phenomenal, magical place, if I can be perfectly honest, Sandhurst. It's an incredible place to work.
Yeah, and great people have been there as instructors. Billy Mott was an instructor there for a period of time.
He was, yeah. I think Bill was New College Sergeant Major at one stage as well. So the Regimental Sergeant Major of New College, yeah.
Yeah. I have he's dead now, but he was the RSM for the Devon and Dorsets, and he was there as an instructor.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
Many years ago. But
yeah.
How long did you serve at the college?
So I was there 2 years. So I did sort of the first term in the Skillet Arms Wing, took my platoon from start to finish, and then went back in the Skillet Arms Wing for another couple of terms then. But 2 years I was at the academy. And
where did you go to from there?
So it's the dreaded return back to battalion there for a colour sergeant, because you're actually going into the stores sort of around the majority of you. So you go back and get your G4, as we call it, which is logistics and stores sort of stuff done as a company corpsman sergeant. And I was fortunate enough to join number 3 company at that stage, the Little Iron Men as they're called. That's their nickname. And I joined as the company corpsman sergeant, the CQMS.
What was that like though? You've gone from training officers to making sure that the blankets are stacked properly when people sign out.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, I won't lie. It was going from being a rooster to being a feather duster, but it's great. And there was a particular company commander who I get on really, really well with, and he was a stickler for detail, but a very, very good, knowledgeable, good leader, and I really enjoyed working for him. And he used to sort of, because he knew I was sort of like rigid with my serial numbers and my quantities and stuff. he would take sort of great joy in when he had to come down to do his managerial checks. He would take great joy in sort of winding me up, saying that the numbers were sort of miswritten and there weren't enough of one item. And he only really sort of let on to me a couple of years ago that he used to do that on purpose just to see my face. But yeah, I will get him back. I will get him back one day.
Where were you based at that point, though? Was that back at Wellington?
So we were in cavalry barracks in Hounslow.
Oh, okay.
So right under the flight path of Heathrow.
Yeah. Yes, I've been over there once. Yeah, you are literally under the flight path.
Oh yeah. There's no need for an alarm clock there, because as soon as the first transatlantic jet comes in, you're awake.
Nightmare. How long did you suffer that for?
So I was there just over a year, and then again another great honour of mine. I was given the role of the company sergeant major of number 2 company, my parent company where I first went. And I think it's probably a little bit corny, but it's in your heart. I think when you join the Welsh Guards, you go to your first company, it'll always stay in your heart, whether you're a jam boy, the Prince of Wales's company, whether you're a man of the island of the mighty, number 2 company, or whether you're a little iron man in number 3 company. It always remains a special place in your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does the CSM do? What's their role?
So the majority of the company sergeant major's role is being the interlink between the company commander, who's in charge, who's the officer commanding of the company of around 100 men and women. You're the interlink between them and the soldiers within the company. You oversee basically everything which happens. You oversee the training. You ensure that the duties are manned. You ensure you can forecast out sort of duties, fatigues and exercises, so the soldiers can plan their lives to a certain degree. You're in charge of the discipline of the company. But what you really need there to do as well is look after your soldiers and ensure that they're getting looked after and they're getting the welfare support and the good leadership that every soldier deserves.
Yeah, absolutely right. Were you still involved in ceremonials as well?
Yes, we still were at that stage. So, there'd be a lot of early mornings going back and forth into London from Hounslow to go and do the guard mount. But, public duties, yes, the guys and girls, can get them down if you're doing it for prolonged periods of times. But where you can, so for me as a company sergeant major there, I really looked for periods in the programme where we could A, get away and do some adventure training, or B, just cut people away to spend some quality time with their families. And, I had a couple of sort of heated debates with the company commander and a few of the officers within the company around that stage. What is wrong with having white space in a training programme where we can give back to the soldiers for all their commitment that they've done over the past 2 weekends that they've been working? There is no harm in that. It's how we're going to keep the company moving forward, and it's how we're going to keep the morale up.
Yeah, because it's not the commanding officers that's stagging on for 24 hours, is it? They seem to that soldier that's standing on the gate. I think it's probably the military guard service that do most of them now. But the soldier that's standing on the gate, they've got a life as well.
Exactly.
and it is about morale. And if you're expecting them to go and fight for you, then you've got to do the right thing by them.
Absolutely.
What was it like? Because you've done the birthday parade, Trooping the Colour, for Her Majesty, late Majesty. What was that like, the first one that you took part in? What was that like? You've got your bare skin, you've got your boots have been bald to within an inch of their life. What was that like as you're marching down from Buckingham Palace or from Wellington Barracks?
So I first did Trooping the Colour in 1996, but I don't really class it as Trooping the Colour, because it was street lining, sort of gutter sniping for the Irish Guards Troop in 1996. So you had a little bit of a taste of it then. But I mean, I think it was 97 before I first did it. I can't remember. My dates are rubbish. But anyway, a lot of training. Then we used to go to Chelsea Barracks. That was still there.
Yeah.
You'd get on a sort of a DAF and go through central London in the morning, go and do a full day rehearsal in Chelsea, and then come back and try and cram all the work in. But it was quite funny at this stage as well. Two very good friends of mine, who I won't name, just to save their blushes, although I don't think they will. They actually got caught sort of having a scrap between each other. And the military justice system back there was absolutely horrendous. And the two of them, just for having a little scrap with each other, a little tete-a-tete, they got 28 days to spend in the guard room in Wellington Barracks.
Oh, no.
28 days detention, yeah. And, they used to get signed out every day from the guard room to go and do the troop and the colour rehearsals. So the duty non-commissioned officer, the duty NCOs and the corporals would have to go and sign these two guys out of the jail, do Chelsea Barracks, pray that they didn't do a runner while they were in Chelsea Barracks, and then take them back to jail in the evenings, But so they were in jail doing troop in the colour sort of lessons, and it was good for them. Their last day of sentence was the day of troop in the colour. So when they came out, they could grab a beer and get on the train and go home. Yeah.
How fun is that?
But the sense of pride that you felt on the day. I mean, leading up to it, it was just the formality of getting it done, making sure that your part in the parade was right. But I think the day itself, in front of Her Majesty, when she comes along in her carriage and inspects the line, and she probably didn't even look at you in the eye, but it felt that she looked at you in the eye, and there was a real special moment there where you just catch her glance. It's it's pretty incredible, and it's just popped into my mind there. I was lucky to go to a celebration of the Royal British Legion in Westminster Abbey, and I was lucky enough to sit with one of my bosses who was a 3-star general. And I vowed to thee my country was being sung, and I looked across. Her Majesty was there, and she might not have been looking to me, but it felt as if I was singing that, and I was looking directly at her and caught her gaze, for about 5 seconds, and that's a moment I'll treasure. But on the troop and the colour, absolutely, when you catch a stare off Her Majesty when you're going past the dais or where she's inspecting the line, that's a pretty incredible moment.
Yeah. As a spectator, mate, I still watch it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very patriotic. I will walk past that Guards Memorial at Horse Guards Parade, and anybody I'm with, I will explain that there's 5 guards afoot. Everything about it. I absolutely. But on the 11th of November, I'll be in tears because I don't know why. I don't know why. Whether I'm army barmy or I'm just patriotic, I just absolutely. I think it's right, the remembrance stuff and all the, the Royal British Legion do a great job, and so do the others, SAFA and all the others. There's some great organisations out there. Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's a recognition of service, and it's a recognition that freedom doesn't come free. Somebody pays for it somewhere,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Talking about that, how do you feel now? You lost friends in Iraq and in Afghanistan. How do you feel now as a former soldier, officer in the Welsh Guards? How do you feel about the losses and the fact that they've gone back to their rebel state, basically?
Yeah, and that really does get me down, Paul. So I try not to think of the sort of strategic failure as it was there. I mean, I look at that as a failure in politics, a failure in foreign policy, and a failure in strategy. That's what I see that. But I tried to look at the successes that we had at the tactical and operational level. That's what I hold on to. Things that those soldiers and my soldiers were asked to do every single day. They did it to the best of their ability. And when the enemy was put in front of them, they didn't once falter. They did not once sort of say, no, we're not attacking this. No, we're not doing that. They did it every single time. And that's where I take my strength from, not, watching the Taliban take over a nukeable compound or watching the Taliban do this. I hold on to our tactical and our operational successes, because for me, that was the sacrifice that my friends and our friends and everybody's friends who didn't come back, that was what their sacrifices were for. And I can't look at the strategic failure as part of that. Yeah.
Well put,
find it a bit difficult, that one.
Yeah, no, sorry, but it's a question that I'm sure many people ask, because I lost mates. I lost mates from the military police in Colchester.
Yeah.
they got killed out there, you know, in the different theatres, and it's very, very hard to reconcile. And I think that, like you say, the work that you guys did, you should be very proud of that, because you won the hearts and minds. You won the hearts and minds of the civilian population. And once somebody took the finger out the dam, guess what? The water came back through. You know, who knew that was going to happen?
Yeah.
What point did you go for your commission? How far into your service?
So I'd become the regimental sergeant major again. You know, the lucky enough that timing was right. I was given the appointment as a regimental sergeant major, so I did that for just under 2 years. Lucky again enough to take the battalion across to Kabul to do another Afghanistan tour. Completely different, you know, not kinetic at all, but the threat was there. You know, very, very real threat. And a different role and a different job. So did that. On the back end of that tour then, I did my late entry commissioning course selection, if you like. And that was a week long down in Warminster, where you do sort of various discussion groups, you do planning exercises, you're interviewed by some senior officers. And on the back of that, then you're either sort of offered a commission, or you're told, no, it's not for you. But that week course isn't everything. It's all about your reports leading up to that. It's about your recommendation from your brigade commander, from your brigadier. There's there's other variables involved with it rather than just that week's course.
So you get picked up, and you've gone from the regimental sergeant major, top hog in the trough, to you're now a late entry officer.
So I was lucky, actually, Paul. So I did the command sergeant major role, which was something fairly new for the army. So to be a command sergeant major, you had to enter the commissioning process, and you had to effectively be a late entry captain. And that was for sort of stuff to do with your pension and your seniority, to make sure that you didn't lose out. So again, right place, right time. I was lucky enough to throw my hat into consideration to go out to the United States to go and study at the United States Sergeant Majors Academy. And again, lucky enough, I managed to get that gig. And my wife and my youngest son, we up sticks. We rented the house out in Swansea, and we went across to Western Texas for nearly 2 years to live.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal, you know. And I can remember coming home and telling my wife that, you know, I'd got it. I told my son when he came home from school and he threw his bag on the floor and was running around the house, so excited, you know, as a 13-year-old. Yeah, absolutely. It was an opportunity. And looking back, you know, it was an opportunity that was just too good to try to pass up.
That is fantastic. So what would you do down there? What did you do?
So basically, the US Sergeant Majors Academy is in Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso in Texas, so right on the border with Juarez in Mexico. And it was basically a big academics course. It was like going to college effectively. So you rotated through 5 semesters. So you'd have the Department of Command Leadership, where you'd learn all about command leadership, professional studies, force management, army operations, and joint operations. And yeah, it was heavily academic, lots of writing papers, lots of sort of big discussions, lots and lots of really interesting guest speakers from agencies from across America to senior sort of military generals from across the states. But what was also good, you had, just to give you the scale of the place, Paul, it was 750 US students on the course, plus 66 international students. Now, I've got friends from the international community that we sort of formed, from, you know, Poland to Argentina to Brazil to Norway to Australia. My network for senior soldiers became absolutely massive. Good. And the network that I built with the US students, you know. So we did that. I had to do a little bit of extra study, and I was able to get a bachelor's degree in leadership and workforce development. from the Northern Colleges Association. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, I've got a bachelor's, which was great. And, you know, my family and I lived the American dream for nearly 2 years.
Right, I'm going to take you back to that young lad that was walking past that army recruiting office. How many qualifications did you leave school with?
Couple of GCSEs, probably above grade C. Yeah.
Are your folks still around?
Yeah, my mum is. Yeah, my dad's passed. My mum is. Yeah.
I bet I bet they're as proud as punch.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of it is luck as well, Paul. Being in the right place at the right time and having that opportunity literally just land in your lap. And you know, you make your own luck, I think, to a certain degree, but a lot of it is timing as well. But
you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to be in it to win it, haven't you? You cannot. Yeah,
absolutely.
You can't sit back and say, "Oh, woe is me. I want somebody to give it to me." No, you've got to go and grab it by the balls and bring it in screaming. And that's the only way. That's the only way you're going to get things in life. And that's fantastic, man.
Yeah. Fantastic. So you know, it was great as well because America have got at least one public holiday a month for something.
At least.
So so we were able to sort of jump in the car and just use America as our back garden. So you know, we had trips we'd drive to, you know, San Francisco and then drive down Highway 1. We did that all over Christmas Day on Santa Monica Beach and up to Denver and Colorado and New Mexico. It was a pretty incredible special time for us as a family as well.
Yeah, I bet. So you've done your 2 years, and then where did you go when you got back?
So I had to go back to work, unfortunately, Paul. So I landed in a 3-star command sergeant major job then, which was home command. So easiest way to explain it, I think, is the army is a 4-star headquarters where the chief of the general staff, General Rowley, sits. The army then effectively breaks into two. You've got joint helicopter command or joint aviation command, but that'll just confuse matters. So the army effectively breaks into two with 2 3-star generals. You got home command, where I was, and field army, which sort of gets the troops ready and deploys our troops on operations, big training exercise.
Right.
Home command, my old boss used to call it the foundations of the British Army's fighting power. So it was commanding all things recruiting, actually commanded London District, commanded ARITC, which is the recruiting piece, Army Personnel Centre in Glasgow, and a few other little bits and bobs. But what home commanded was really the biggest sort of the main effort when I was there was the recruiting sort of pipeline, getting that sorted and getting people through basic training into trade training.
And how long were you
effectively,
there?
my boss was a 3-star general. When I first went there, it was a general called General Sir Tyrone Urch. And he also was the commander of Standing Joint Command, which was Defence's headquarters for Operation Rescript and other MACA stuff, military assistance to civil authorities. Right. So anytime a government organisation called on the military, Secretary of State for Defence said yes, you know, it filtered down to my boss to get sorted.
Right, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, because you don't see that upper echelon very often, do you?
And I didn't even, you know, that's the first time I'd ever been at that level, and I was just dumbfounded. Yeah.
Yeah, I met a 3-star at the Tower the other week. I can't remember, but he was doing it. It was an international course actually. He had officers from all over the world. Who did he serve with? He served with one of the beef. Oh, he's a former Royal Marine.
Right, okay.
Yeah, he served with a guy called Andy Merry, who's a beefeater at the Tower. So how long did you do that for, and how did life progress from there?
So that was 2 years as well, and that was an absolutely incredible job, and I learned so much during that time about strategy, about how to develop relationships, how to develop sort of neural networks, and really that higher level of leadership and command. How how the generals and sort of senior leaders and senior officers of big organizations really try and get the best out of their people, you know, really incredible, massive learning curve. And the exposure and empowerment that both the 2 3 stars that I served for gave me, you know, they wanted me to go and look in the dark, dusty corners of their command and bring things back to them which needed sorting. And I think the part of the success of that job was not always coming back to a 3-star general to tell him something has gone wrong in one of the regiments that he sits in the command. It's about taking that information, that issue, and delivering it to the right level. So that organization or that regiment's leadership have got an opportunity to put things right before more heat and light gets put on it, which can A, make the situation worse, and B, put them in a precarious position when they didn't even know about an issue or problem. Yeah. And I think it's having the ability to have that emotional intelligence where you know the entry level to deliver a problem and also assist with finding solutions to that problem. And that was a lot of that command sergeant major role was doing that. I think in the 2 years that I was there, I had 2 3-star generals. The second was General Sir Ian Cave. I had to go and shut the door with them sort of 3 times on issues that they needed to know about very, very quickly. Everything else was solved underneath them, and I didn't need to draw their attention to it. So
that's very good.
Yeah, sorry, rabbited on a little bit there.
No, that's absolutely fine. It's fascinating. So what point are you in your career when you've come out of there?
So on paper, I'm a late entry captain, but yeah. I'm still a Warrant Officer Class 1 Command Sergeant Major.
Right, okay. And do you make the transition? Do you go into...
Eventually, yeah, they kicked me out dragging and screaming. You know, I had aspirations to trying to become the Army Sergeant Major. You know, I'll make no sort of lies about that. I wanted to become the Army Sergeant Major, but unfortunately, the time didn't work. And, you know, in the Army and the forces, if the timing is not right and the availability of a job is not right, then unfortunately you miss out on that job, you know. There can be opportunities to put you in a little bit of a holding pattern, but yeah, I mean, there's great people coming behind you as well, which they're going to want to bite of the cherry. So after that course, luckily enough, again, I was selected to be a student on the Intermediate Command and Staff College course, which is down at the Defence Academy, and essentially it's the majors course for the British Army.
Right.
A lot about leadership, a lot about analysis, a lot about geopolitics, a little bit on strategy, a lot on sort of risk management, risk mitigation, risk awareness, and risk mitigation. So, you know, again, sort of 16-year-old Dean Morgan from Pentre Howard School in Swansea is sat in a classroom with 12 other very, very, very intelligent people, a lot with master's degrees and working in some pretty niche parts of defence. I'm sat there having conversations with them on Clausewitz, on strategy, on geopolitics, on defence issues. Yeah, and an absolute incredible sort of 6 months for me to go and learn and enjoy being around people like that.
And were they late entrant, or were they come in as, you know, come?
There was a few late entry officers. I had another late entry guy in my syndicate, but the majority are direct entry officers.
Wow, and they've come out of Cambridge and Oxford and all the other.
Eton, yeah. You know, and I just loved listening to them. Some of the stories they had about those establishments and what they get up to. But great people.
Historically, the Guards, you bought your way into being an officer, didn't you? I mean, it was literally, it was your father had been an officer, and therefore you'd buy your way into being. In fact, I spoke to Harry Legg Burke. I don't know if you've ever met him. He's a Crick Owl. He was a former officer. Yeah. I'm going to be doing a podcast with him in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
He's an interesting character. Very passionate about the regiment. I mean, he really is. But yeah, I was very lucky to be introduced to him. You become a major.
Mm-hmm.
You're 25 years in the service at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about that. Yeah.
How did you think it was going to go? What made you say, do you know what? I've had enough now. I'm signing off, because you are, you know, Welsh Guard through and through. You're that stick of rock. What made you say, I've had enough? I'm going out into the private world.
So after ICSC, I was fortunate enough to get a job in defence equipment and support, which is probably, I would say, around 92%, 93% civil servant. So I joined the Director General Land, so another 3-star. I joined their team, and I was looking after an agreement called the CASP, which is an agreement between D&S and strategic programs in London, all about sort of milestones and a lot of sort of project controls sort of stuff. And I found that I really enjoyed working in that sort of environment. I really enjoyed learning something new. I really enjoyed that sort of that different working environment, you know, being in the office, the ability to sort of work flexibly from home as well. And I met some really, really knowledgeable and professional sort of civil servants in D&S there, who gave me the time to make me understand about the project management sort of the project management life cycles,
right?
Understand how project controls work, understand, you know, the nuances in delivering defence programs and stuff. And, you know, around about that stage, I was, you know, starting to think, do I really want to go back to Windsor and, you know, start the commute to South Wales again? Do I really want to be leaving my wife at home on her own? So my two lads had flown the nest at that stage as well. And I just felt that, you know, I couldn't give the 100% dedication and motivation to the army that I could have done in previous years. Right. And that will only end one way. That will just end with me becoming bitter, grumpy, and generally not a good person to be around at work, you know.
You've just summed up everybody I know.
I was in Windsor yesterday handing my kit in. I was having a brew with my mate Jack Owen in the officers' mess, and he said exactly the same question. I mentioned this stuff, but the actual nail in the coffin was when I got up for work one morning, and, you know, being a guardsman, I'm usually sort of immaculately turned out, and I saw my sort of clothes, my uniform in the ironing pile, and I just grabbed it, shook it, and put it on. And I'd never, ever done that in like 28 years. And I thought, you know what, that's the time to go. So, I hit the button, as we call it.
So you're all signed off now?
Yeah.
All gone, done. Pensions in the bank?
Not yet. Next month, that one.
Next month. How do you feel?
Excited. I am really, really excited to start this sort of journey with the NHS Wales. And, you know, I know they're under pressure. I know they suffer probably with the same sort of frictions that we did working for defence equipment support in terms of fiscal stuff. I get that. But when I was looking for a new job, you know, I cast the sort of drift net really, really wide, spoke to really, really some good people who gave me some really sound advice. You know, I looked at the defence sector. I was offered a job as a operations manager in D&S as a civil servant, a few other sort of offers, but it wasn't lighting my fire. And, you know, I was introduced then to two gentlemen from the Irish and Bevan Health Board in NHS Wales through a company called Build Force, and a lovely lady called Alison Rees, who does a lot of work placing veterans into sort of jobs. And it was literally a conversation with those two guys that sort of sparked something inside me to want to join the NHS. And what I can put it down to, Paul, is just that dedication to service. Now, I've been in a role where service is important for the last 28 years, and I get it, it's a different sort of service. But that really is my motivation for joining the NHS, is just to service and to help people. And, you know, really, really excited and looking for it. And yes, I will miss the military. I'll miss the people. I won't miss the commute. I won't miss the short notice stuff. But hey, that's part of the army. You can't join the army and expect to have a 10-minute commute to work. But I left before I sort of became bitter and grumpy about having to do things I didn't particularly want to do. But that's not the Army or the Welsh Guards' fault whatsoever. They've literally given me everything, given me my life. They've made me financially stable now for the rest of my life, and I'll be forever indebted to the Army and the Welsh Guards. But, you know, I'm really excited to my next journey with NHS Wales.
Mate, you've been absolutely captivating. If you had your time again, you'd do it again, wouldn't you? But yeah, you'd do it again, wouldn't you? In a heartbeat. And you've mentioned some fantastic people there. Some people that I know, some I don't. But I know the ilk of the people that you're talking about, and I've spent many a happy hour standing next to them in the sergeant's mess at Wellington Barracks. In fact, I've spent many a happy hour falling over next to them. It was brilliant. But I wish you all the very best for your future. Please, I look forward to seeing your LinkedIn updates. If there's anything I can ever do to help you, if you've ever got anything, any friends that want to talk about what they did, please point them my way, because I love this. I'm not a sycophant, if you speak to Steve Shield, he'll tell you exactly what I'm like. But, I absolutely love doing this, and I do it for this very reason. I've had a sabbatical. Mm-hmm. I had a few weeks off from doing it. I got to my 100th episode and thought, I'm just going to have a little break. But now I realise why I've come back, because you've made this interview so alive, and I'm very grateful. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been captivating. I hope you've enjoyed the experience. And I say this to everybody, and it won't mean anything to you unless you've been across the table from a police officer, but have you got anything you'd like to add, alter or correct in relation to the statement that you've made today?
No, I'm all good. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Take care. So, Dean, let's go back. It's September the 8th, 2022, and Her Majesty the Queen passes. What was that like for you within the regiment, and how was that received? Because she was the most iconic woman in the world, and to me, she's up there when it comes to great people. What was that like in the army?
So I was on ICSC at the time, my majors course, and I think we were all following the feed very, very closely, and it was, I think it was sort of during our lunch break, a little bit of free time, that it was announced on the radio and on the news that Her Majesty had passed. And I can remember thinking at the time that it didn't feel like that it was real.
No.
It's hang on a minute, this can't be. This you know, Her Majesty's not going to die. Surely or not. You know, this can't be real. And I think as that sort of day progressed, then it was quite surreal actually, because you know the whole course met in the bar, and somebody rang the bell, ladies and gentlemen, Her Majesty the Queen, and we all toasted Her Majesty that evening. And you know that the sort of flurry of writing operational orders and headquarters London district pulling out their plans for Operation London Bridge, and ensuring that you know all the correct warning orders had gone out. All this stuff was going on and happening, but I was a little bit sheltered from it, thankfully, because I was on ICSC.
Yeah.
And the regiment were very keen that all officers were given the opportunity to take part in the vigil service for Her Majesty. And you know, again, luckily enough, I was one of them, and I had the honour of standing at Her Majesty's coffin during the vigil service, and that was, you know, moments and times that I will never ever forget for the rest of my life. And I can remember doing my last sort of 20 minutes, and that was the end before we handed over to another regiment. And as I turned and marched away, I felt this overwhelming sense of sorrow that was my last duty as a 45-year-old man, having done it since I was a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
You know, and that was my last action, the last bit of service to Her Majesty as we marched away from the catafalque, and then up the stairs and away. You know, and I did feel that overwhelming sense of sorrow at that point.
Yeah, amazing, mate. Absolutely amazing. Because Vern Stokes, I know Vern. You know, the great work and the ceremonial stuff was absolutely overwhelming.
Oh, spot on, wasn't it? Absolutely incredible.
I was in Australia when she passed away, and it was my son's wedding, and you know, we toasted Her Majesty, and it was yeah. Good luck in your new career, sir. I look forward to buying you a pint somewhere at some point in your life. And
yeah, we will definitely.
If you get into London, give me a shout, and I'll come and stand you a beer somewhere.
Perfect. That's very kind of you, Paul. Thank you.
Take care. God bless. I hope your son's career goes well in the Royal Air Force.
Thank you very much.
I will speak to you when you're older.
Paul, you're a good man. Thank you very much for the opportunity, mate. Appreciate it.
God bless you. This will be out on Monday.
Brilliant. I'll take a good look. Thanks, mate.
All right, mate. God bless you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.